Ish. There we go. This session is now being recorded. Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Takata. I am the technical evangelist for Adobe ColdFusion. Thank you for joining me today for a little chat about some of the new administrator features in Adobe ColdFusion 2023. Show of hands, how many of you are already using 23? Do you have it installed? Are you playing with it? Do you have the trial going? Are you scared? John's using CF. Okay, CF23. Very good. Very good. Michelle's on the trial. Playing discovering issues. Yeah. There were a few things, that were early on. Maybe next year. Cool. Yeah. So we've had a couple security updates, obviously, that actually were across the board, but also affected 23. As you know, tonight. Very cool, Melissa. All right. We are planning another the update 1 for 23 is going to be coming up in a month or two here. As usual, a few months after the thing comes out, we usually get our update 1, which a lot of people wait for. So that's coming pretty soon, and it'll fix a few of the bugs that made it through our alpha and beta. So folks that are waiting for that, you should be kind of getting ready for it early fall. But in the meantime, I just wanted to chat a little bit about some of the cool new stuff that got put in for the administrator in CF 2023. And apologies, I actually got a little bit sidelined by chaos. And so my slides are not as filled out as maybe they should be. So mostly I'm just going to kind of be going and showing you where these things are and telling you a little bit about the technology behind them to give you an idea of how you could potentially use these for your own use cases in your business and your applications and the like. So the first thing that I'm going to kind of go into is going to be SAML and LDAP support for administrator. And this is going to be a lot of what today is about. I don't actually have like a cluster or anything for CCS. We are doing a really awesome in-depth, like deep dive CCS talk at Summit in October. That's being done by one of the engineers that actually worked on it. Suchika Singh is going to be doing a talk on CCS, like down to the bones of how the whole thing works. Today, I'm just going to kind of go over it a little bit and show you around a little bit in there. But this is a kind of an overview, a high-level overview of things. And a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the admin API additions. Those are just mostly things that were added to support these things. So the meat of this is really talking about SAML and LDAP support for administrator. And this is something that a lot of people have some confusion about. So I just kind of want to step back and talk about what LDAP really is and how it can be used in your particular use case. A lot of people think that this is like, oh, it's like for programming, or I can like leverage LDAP. And no, we have that already. CF already has some built-in functionality for LDAP, as well as SAML, with SAML coming in last year. Sorry, not last year, last version in 2021. We actually added SAML SSO support for your programming code for you to actually be able to go in and leverage something like an Okta to do single sign-on inside of your application. So that's not what this is, okay? This is something a little bit higher up. It might not even be anything that you deal with as a developer, because in some cases, the things that you're dealing with are not like administrator related. Like a lot of times, some places. Oh, hey, Apurva, could you help Uwe out? It sounds like Uwe is having issues with hearing me. Everyone else can hear me, I think, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. 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 So it just sounds like there might be an issue with your headset. So, Apurva, if you could message Uwe, that'd be great. So let's step back a second and talk about what this feature is and where it came from. So if you've been using ColdFusion for any length of time, you know that there's a username, password, but really it's kind of just like a password, right? Like you have a password to get into administrator, and there you go. Like you get in. Now, the issue with that, and that's fine for like a small team or if you're a solo dev. Jay, yes, this recording will be available on YouTube later. So if you have to go early, no worries about it. You can also ask me questions. You can. I'll have like a contact sheet at the end where I'll have all of my info. So, um, so sorry. So if you're using ColdFusion and you have access to the administrator, you usually would have like a password or a username password. It was usually like one thing. Maybe there might be more than one, but generally speaking, it was not connected to anything, right? That's the real problem there. And if you think about, let's say I work at a university and I have a team of 20 or 30 developers, and developers come and go, sometimes by choice, sometimes not by choice. And something that's really important in cases like that, especially in like a university where there might be like personal information or HIPAA things, like in healthcare, also in government, obviously, is offboarding, right? So offboarding is something that is kind of the bane of a lot of tech administrators, because you need to get it right, right? If someone has been, for example, worst case scenario, you have to fire someone and remove them from your, from being able to access email, servers, all of that. You have password lists, right? Or you have some sort of um, access control that's done through either AD, which is Active Directory if it's Windows, and then there's like a whole lot of different other things, right? That you could set up. So the problem with the way that we had it set up was that if that happens, we were sort of making your DevOps people or your administrators lives more difficult. This was one more password list that they had to worry about. And it's a pretty critical one, right? If your application runs on Adobe ColdFusion, you really want to make sure that people who are not supposed to have access gets that access removed. So we had a lot of folks from government, from larger corporations especially, but even from like smaller universities asking us to add some kind of integration with things that they already use to do onboarding and offboarding. Of course, like the other side of the coin is also important, like getting people access to things. Onboarding is, not as maybe critical from the standpoint of, oh, things are going to go horribly wrong if this person who's mad at us decides to take out our application architecture. But it's also important to get people running quickly, and again, like if you're hiring a bunch of people and trying to onboard them, that can suck, right? That can take a lot of work. So maybe if you could set something up that would work with these people, then it would make it easier. So we added two different ways to be able to do this. Okay. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is something called LDAP. And this is a technology that is fairly old. It's been around for a really long time. It's called lightweight. What is it? Lightweight directory, I think, administration protocol, something like that. And essentially, what LDAP does is it works with other like user and group management systems like AD, and comes off of those access protocol. Thank you, Jay. There you go, access protocol. And it works with these other technologies to be able to like look information up for people. Like I remember back in school, back in the day when I was dodging dinosaurs on the way to work, when I worked at UC Davis back in the 90s. Yeah, I'm that old. we used to always use LDAP to look up people's email, because at that time it was actually kind of hard to do that. So we would go in at our, our terminals. We'd spin up whatever, I don't even remember, it was like Linux or something, and we'd have a way to go, and if I needed to find someone's email address, I could just use LDAP and go and find them, right? And so we used to do that a lot back in the day. Of course, we don't really do that anymore, but the technology is still there. It's still pretty prevalent in a lot of places, and we were asked specifically to see. Yeah, LDAP is still in full effect in enterprise. It's around. People still use it. It's very popular. It's lightweight. It doesn't really add a lot of like performance downsides. Now there are actually downsides to LDAP that you do have to be aware of, and usually this is not something that you have to worry about. But if you are setting things up yourself or playing with it, one of the things to know is LDAP sort of out of the box, the way that it runs and transfers information is not really encrypted, right? It's clear text, it's plain text, end to end, which can potentially, like set you up for some issues with security. Thank you, TNN. Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. Now, there are options for that. There's something called LDAP-S, which lets you transfer LDAP data across HTTPS. So it is secured that way. But, for the most part, you're not really going to be worrying about it. And in this case, what we're looking at is we're actually just trying to figure out what the groups and users and all that are, and assigning them different roles inside of ColdFusion. So I just kind of want to show, hold on, let me just grab. So if I go to security, and I go to user manager. Is it user manager? No, where am I? Oh, it's on the main page. Okay, so this is where you would set this up. And I'm going to talk first about LDAP, and then we'll get a little bit into SAML and SSO. Oh, ADLDS. What is that? See, this is all stuff as a programmer I have very rarely had to experience or get into. Active Directory, Windows AD. Yeah. And one of the things actually with this talk that I will just straight up honestly tell you is trying to set up a local LDAP for myself to like demo this on was an absolute bear. Like I was looking up things to see if I could be like, oh, well, yeah, it's such a pain. It's maybe a little bit easier if you have AD and like your AD is in AWS, like there's an AWS Active Directory service that you could have running and set up. And then they also then allow you to expose that as LDAP. Like that's maybe potentially a tiny bit easier, but it took me, oh gosh, 4 hours to set up open LDAP in a Docker container and actually connect to it, which I did do. I did do it, and I got that running, but then ColdFusion said, absolutely not, I'm not connecting to this thing. And I didn't know enough to fix. So anyway, yes, embarrassing moment for the evangelist. In my defense, I'm not an LDAP developer. I'm a programmer. So there you go. So anyway, in any case, so here we are. This is basically the page that you're looking at. Ignore this 2021 release. I don't know why I'm still running Fortuna on here. But you would go to security, and in the administrator, you would choose separate username and password authentication. Don't do no authentication needed, please, because I don't want to get that phone call. And then what you can do is down here on external authentication, you would choose LDAP and you would edit your LDAP configuration. Okay. And so you would go through here and you'd set your user binds, your base context, your group base context. And one of the things I actually, I know, why is that a UI option? Why not, Jay? Just, authentication, whatever. It tricks them into thinking like, oh, there's no authentication, then there's nothing of value here. Yeah, no, that's not how it works. Please don't set that. Nobody set that to correct, please, or to yes, please. Yeah, we should probably remove that, to be totally honest. Anyway, so yeah, so this is kind of how you connect, and you would save it, right? And you would verify it. Now, of course, I'm actually trying to verify it here. Let's see if I actually have my. Oh no, this is CCS. Sorry. So I don't actually have a setup here that that is running. But what would happen then is it would pull in your users as well as your groups, and this is kind of where you get the potential like cheat code stuff here, because setting up individual users, okay, I mean that's cool, that's pretty easy. But you can also do things like set up groups for access to certain parts of ColdFusion. So what you'll actually be able to do is go in and say, maybe you have a group that's allowed to create data sources, right? So they would have access potentially to set up DSNs, right? Let's say that's a thing that let's say you have a developer group, like a senior developer group. Do you need to be able to edit a configuration file to be able to make the decision to set no passwords? I mean, yes, and maybe even like go on a quest or something, or maybe we should just remove that completely, because that seems like a danger. It seems like it's very close to the other one. So anyway, if you have a group that's allowed to do something like set DSNs or set up REST services, right? Things like that, where maybe you don't want them to have access to, say, your JVM arguments, right? Something very critical for performance. Maybe you don't want them to have access to things like your timeout request times, or the real low level stuff that could potentially do some major damage. Now, not to say that, I mean, if someone removes all your DSNs, then yeah, that's also really bad. But anyway, that would be something that would be maybe malicious. Yes. Yes, and that really, Jay, that is really the sort of the takeaway here, is this ability to set up groups. And the reason why this works is that you can set up these groups, you can put a person into that group in your AD, and this will pick it up over LDAP. And then when you do offboarding, you just offboard the person from your AD, they get removed from the group, they no longer have access to administrator. Bob's your uncle, and you're ready to go. It's really, really powerful, and this is maybe one of the reasons why this was such a requested change. And like you said, obviously LDAP is extremely popular in enterprise. It's still used pretty much, like enterprise wide. In government, it's still used a lot. It's still used in education a lot. It's kind of not going away, I guess, no matter how many other technologies come around. And yeah, not soon. I mean, I can't think of it's so lightweight, and it's so, once it's set up and running, I should say, setting it up still sucks. Maybe they could do something to make that better. But once it's running, it's just, yeah, it's just so useful and powerful. And if you think about it too, this actually, even if you are not necessarily as interested in the onboarding, offboarding, all of that, there's still value here. If your business, if your enterprise, whatever you're in, wants to do proper security, right? And what I mean by that is least allowable access. That's an industry-wide sort of standard. That's a best practice, right? Only give access to the small amount of things that someone needs specifically for their job duty. This lets you do that. And so like today, if you've got your whole team maybe logging in here, that may not be something that you'll be able to do in the future, right? Like if people are coming out and doing audits and looking into your security, they yeah, just in time access. Oh yeah, yeah, least privileges. I mean, zero trust is also a big thing, but yeah, I mean, yeah, least privileges is kind of that's super common everywhere. It's possible in the future, and I've seen this actually happen. I saw this happen at a university group where everything was really open. They had a lot of trust. They had a small team. They only had like 5 people, right? It wasn't like a huge big development team. Everybody knew everyone. And someone came in and basically said, we are not allowing you access to any of the servers anymore. You're not allowed to even log into administrator. Like they just locked them out completely because they didn't have this opportunity or option to do this like pinpoint style of access. So it really, I mean, it really lowered their ability to have velocity, right? And it also there's like this trust issue, right? Like they felt bad about it. I was actually part of this team when this happened. I was on contract over there, and I'll be honest, it was not a good feeling for people. I mean, this included the lead architect was actually locked out of their production servers completely and utterly, kind of out of nowhere. And it was based on some security stuff that they had done. And yeah, security is a compromise for usability. I do agree with that. Now, on the flip side of that, of course, it forced them into a CI/CD, which had a full security, workflow that was set up. So that part was actually good. It did actually improve what they were doing, but they still were never really able. They had to, if they needed to make a change to their ColdFusion administrator, it meant an email to one of the DevOps people. It got set in the stack, right? It probably wouldn't get done for several days or maybe a week if there was something else going on. That's not good, right? Like that's not something that you want as a team. You want to be able to be responsive and agile while also maintaining some semblance of security and audit and all that. So anyway, so that's the LDAP side of things, and it's probably it's a little bit more of the complex side of things here in doing this. The other side of things is something that you may be a little bit more familiar with, and that's SAML. So, how many people here use some kind of SAML authentication in their enterprise, in their business, in their work? Yeah, Jay. I mean, that's true. And production, I mean, I got why they had to do what they ended up doing. It was I mean, and they got locked out of staging, and they got locked out of staging, prod, and test too, which was sort of, anyway, it was a whole thing. It was a panic reaction because some other like people on campus got hacked, or someone, like, I think, it wasn't even a hack. It was somebody who had left, ended up like maintaining access, and they screwed up someone's website. Anyway, it was a whole thing. It was an overreaction to try and make it seem as though they were doing something positive, which ended up negatively impacting a whole team's performance. But anyway, bygones be bygones. That was many, 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 many years ago, and they're actually thriving now. So, so SAML is essentially a single sign-on type of situation. It's a way of going out and getting your authentication done that's not on the server that you're on right now. You've got basically a place that has an identity provider, service provider, and you can use that to authenticate into, well, just about anything. Now, you may be familiar with it from ColdFusion already having this support for your application. So that was something we added in 2021, and it works great. You can set up your own apps with this authentication to use with like Okta. That's what we use at Adobe. Like we've got Okta single sign-on for all of our stuff. But people also were asking, well, how about you add SAML support in for being able to log into your administrator? And we said, sure. I mean, we kind of had the code already. And so we added that. So this is another way, yet another way that you can use an external, I don't want to call it a password list because that's not what it is, but it's a user authentication or user management system to lock people out or allow them in to your server here. Now, this does not have as much flexibility, in my opinion, as LDAP. I think the reason we added LDAP was just it was a little more flexible. But I think also LDAP is used maybe more widely. I'm not sure if that's actually true. Jay, what do you think, Jay? Like, is because I know SAML's been like a rock star thing. It's been going up. Might SAML work for say Duo or yes, yeah. So yeah, absolutely, Jay. So authentication provider. Yeah, so Duo, you can actually do, and it's beyond Duo. It's basically if your SAML provider, so Okta does this actually. So if your provider has a multi-factor built into it, then yeah, it totally works, and that is outside of our control and all that. It basically what we need and what we want is a token returned from the provider back to our system to say this person is authenticated. Now, how they go about doing that is just kind of up to the provider. So, like for example, for us here, we have an app that whenever I log into literally anything here, I get a choice to either get a ping on my watch or on my phone or whatever and say yes, or I get a little entry that I can put in. You've got the actual code generator thing, right? And then I can like put that in. Now, my system here, if let's say I was using that for authentication into an app or authentication into here, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't really necessarily know or care that it's got the Duo stuff going on. It just knows that once Okta is happy that I logged in and says, okay, Mark is an authenticated user. He's not some robot or whatever. It's going to send back that token and we'll be good to go. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Yeah, Jay. Yeah, no, this is absolutely. And if you're talking about apps like hello, am I back? Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. Apparently, a squirrel just got electrocuted trying to chew through my network. So I am back. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So as I was saying, Jay, if you are looking to do some like Duo or whatever, and I'm not. I think Duo actually has like a SAML solution. I'm not 100% sure about that. I haven't actually used that. Oh, thank you, Jay. Let me share my screen. Yeah. 1 second. My bad. Boop. Boop. And make sure I can actually see my own screen. Yay. We're back. There we go. Sorry about that. Yes. So yeah, if you want to use that sort of thing, it absolutely, as long as I don't know what version of CF you're on. Hopefully you're on 2021 because 2018 is out of support right now. But if you are on 21 or 23, then you've got that built in. That is actually, let me see if I can just, oh yeah, it's right here. So you would just set up an identity provider and a service provider and good to go. So yeah, and that would basically what that creates is that creates the the name of an object that you can then use to check for tokens inside of your application. And I think, oh my gosh, I want to say I had a talk on this. Jay, can you email me and remind me? Oh, wait a minute. Where's my mouse? Email me there and ask me to try and look up my talk on setting this up. I actually had, and this was a while back, I did a talk a couple of years ago on actually using SAML in applications. So like building an app, testing the app, running it, and it had like demo code and it had all of that type of stuff. So that exists somewhere. And actually a lot of that applies also to obviously the, this stuff, right? Like if you are using, if you're using SAML already, you could potentially, and of course, if you're using it for your own internal users, I should say, not necessarily for your application users, then you could also use it here. Okay, how am I doing? Oh gosh, more than halfway. Okay, somehow I recognize your email. We might have had contact before. Oh yeah, I've been here for a long time. I've been here a while. Sorry, what was that? Oh, thank you for pushing those updates to CF 2018. Yes. No, we are. We saw that security issue was going to come out, and we felt that it was really critical for people that are still on CF 2018. We know that we pushed 23 out, maybe a little bit later than we wanted to, for a bunch of chaotic and horrible reasons, but we really wanted to make sure that the people on CF 2018 were not going to be negatively affected by all those issues. So, and that whole thing, yeah, I have a lot of friends who have not been getting a lot of sleep, who are doing Python and PHP and all that, who had similar issues and patches and all sorts of nasty stuff that they had to fix with their serialization stuff too. So it was kind of an industry-wide. It reminded me of Heartbeat. If you remember that, or Heartbreak, whatever the thing was for SSL. You guys remember that? That was something. Okay, so moving on. Heartbeat. Yeah. It was someone figured out that they could overwhelm SSL. Yes. And of course, Charlie. We love Charlie. Charlie is always out there, like figuring out like workarounds and tips and tricks and like magic ways to make things work. And we love Charlie to death. And speaking of which, because I'm gonna keep plugging this away until we fill up all of Vegas with ColdFusion developers. You have to go to Summit this year. Charlie will be doing his incredibly popular, incredibly amazing, incredibly useful hidden gems of ColdFusion 2023. And let me tell you, he talks about stuff that I don't even know about sometimes in there. Like, I'll be like, you're kidding. And I'm one of the guys who worked on it. So definitely do not miss it. Yes, Charlie is our secret underground master. Then he's pulling the strings, right? But seriously, yeah, he's going to be doing a great talk. We just this morning had a great session with the content committee that's putting together everything for Vegas. I have never seen a lineup like we have. We have like 8 first-time speakers bringing in crazy cool new stuff. You're gonna lose your mind. So if you can beg, borrow, or steal or blackmail your boss, well, don't do that. I mean, if you can get away with it, but to get to Vegas in October, do it. It's gonna be an absolute hoot and a holler. And you get to see me in a bright blue suit with a leopard button-up shirt. Which, I mean, that's it's worth the cost of entry just for that, right? All right, sorry. Went a little off to the side there. Let's go to let's talk a little bit about CCS. Um, so yes, John, I can't wait to meet you, John. So John is going for the very first time this year. So you get to meet John too. If if you all go, it's going to be awesome. So what is CCS besides three letters? So CCS is Central Configuration Server or Service, depending on who you ask. So CCS was something that we brought out to help, again, administrators. This doesn't really affect developers and programmers necessarily. It's more like folks like Jay, or like folks that are doing like the security or the back end, or like DevOps, or setting up servers, whatever it is. This tool is really designed to help those people gain a little bit of control and a little bit of like personal safety and security, and feeling good about doing things like making updates, changing settings, and all that. So again, it's kind of hard for me to show it here. When Suchika sets up her stuff, she's actually going to have a whole cluster of servers that are running up in AWS, like bringing down, screwing up, unscrewing up, because there is a back out. There's like a history thing that you can back out of, which is a great feature of CCS, by the way. Not to bury the lead there, but so I'm just going to kind of give you a high level overview, give you a little bit of an idea on how to play with it, what it does, and then you can explore it. And hopefully when you come to Vegas, Holland, oh, I want to go to Holland. Holland looks so beautiful. I have to go to Holland. When you play with it, yeah, email me questions if you run into issues, trying to play with it and run it, and all that. Just let me know, and we can I can get some answers for you. So anyway, so what does CCS do really? So CCS allows you to designate a single server as sort of like a controlling server for the other server nodes that you have out there. Now, if you run one server, it's not very useful, right? That's not that, like, if your company is really small and you just have one CF server that's running, or if you're a hosted solution, or if you're in the cloud running like an AMI, maybe, that you don't have a ton of control over, and you just have the one thing. This is not necessarily for you right now. In the future, though, I will say we are looking at this to become kind of a central controlling dashboard for people to be able to, not only in like other servers and other clusters and other setups, but to be able to sort of see what's going on in your own system and control it a little bit more. Maybe even to be able to back out of things that have happened that you set up. Yeah, Jacob, this is still, and I want to make this sort of really clear, that we need and want your feedback on this feature. This is a feature that myself and Aditya, if you remember Aditya, he was the former PM. A couple years ago, he was the PM here, and like, we just kind of we thought about like what would be a really great thing to help people feel better about doing updates, because we always get this feedback from customers that you're scared to do feedback, you're scared to do updates, and we get it, right? Like, it's, or even make changes, right? Like, oh, I don't want to, we tell you, oh, you go ahead and just change your JVM argument. Well, what if I do that and it takes my server down? Well, what do I do then, right? Like, how do I get it back? And there really wasn't a good, easy answer to that. If you take down your server to the point where ColdFusion will not come up, so basically none of my CF admin integrated updaters work with a custom services. Oh, yeah. I mean, and again, this is not necessarily going to work for every single place, but I will say, Jay, I will say you are actually a great person for us to talk to, because we want to make this work for as wide an audience as possible. Even if you have a little bit of a unique situation, we really want to make sure that you are that you're taken care of, right? Because I mean, kind of everyone has a unique situation, right? Like I know this university that I worked at, they have their they have like attached storage. They have CF running in a like a local. I don't even remember exactly what it is. It's almost like a container, but it has no storage of its own. Like it connects dynamically to another set of storage, and all of that is behind F5. And F5 actually connects to 14 of those who all connect to the same storage. So if you thought your setup was weird, these guys, these guys have, yeah, it's wild what they do. And it's really because, and I know you're like, why would anybody do that? It's because they have 50,000 students. And when student registration comes around, these guys run their registration system off of ColdFusion. When registration comes around, everybody wants to get in a class, right? Because to graduate, you need to take your classes, right? So at 10 a.m. on that morning, there's people slamming, refresh, 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 refresh to try to hit it. And it's, before it would just like take a single server down. So they have something, they have this sort of system set up that way. Anyway, so for folks like that, we want them to be able to control all of their servers, right? And it's kind of a weird setup. Like I am not 100% sure CCS would work in that particular setup. So we're working with them to help that. And if your system is also that way, Jay, let's talk. Shoot me an email. Let's have you chat with our current PM, Sharvy, who's amazing, because we want to continue improving this. And I will 100% fully acknowledge that this feels very much like an engineer's tool, right? It's not necessarily pretty. The GUI is, you're kind of like, well, what do I do here? How do I set this up? And in fact, if I were just to give this to you right now, you wouldn't know what to do with it. You'd be like, what? How do I run it? Right? Yes, fire. Well, and I will say, Jay, in the past, I have seen. So Jay says we've accidentally had an advertising network send worldwide data in instead of national data, and it wasn't their app servers that crashed, but it was the firewalls. I will say also, I have seen ColdFusion stand up and take insane amounts of inbound traffic, and Oracle was almost always like the Oracle database was almost always the thing that would go down before CF did. So CF is great. It's powerful. It's resilient. Yeah, it's wonderful. As long as you have good devs and your code is solid, it's great. So Tejas says, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. How is CCS different than prior cluster management that was available? That's a really, really good question, because that's one of the first things that people ask. So the difference really is that the other cluster management was limited. It didn't have as many options as CCS does, but more importantly, the previous cluster management did not have this idea of being able to back out of a chain. So what happens when you run CCS and you have it set up and you've got all your servers running and the nodes are set up and put into your CCS and being controlled, is when you make a change and push it out to that particular server, you get a little entry that says that you did that. So it actually tracks like what you did, who did it, it audits it, which is actually another nice little thing for security, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But most importantly, there's a way to back out of that chain. So let's say you do that and it just absolutely borks that server and takes it down. Like, oops, okay, maybe I shouldn't set simultaneous templates to 1, right? Like, which never do that, please. So you can now, in the past, what you could do in that case, you could probably just log back into it. Maybe if that didn't completely and utterly destroy it, and reset it to be the correct amount for your needs. But here you can actually just say undo, and it will go ahead and push the previous setting back to that server, and immediately it will come back up, and you'll be able to use it. So that's really, so this is, in some ways, we're kind of slowly replacing the old cluster management with this. It's just not there yet. Again, this is a tool that we thought was valuable enough and awesome enough for you to use, and it's definitely production ready. You just have to kind of learn how to use it. That's the only sort of drawback to it. It's not necessarily that that easy to just look at and use. And I'll show you kind of what I mean by that, because to actually get this running, you need to drop into PowerShell. You need to drop in and run a few things at the command line. How will CCS work? How CCS will work with Kubernetes? That's a, well, Tushar, that's a really good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. You know, let me ask the team, because one of the things that we've been really trying to focus on recently is really realizing and being aware that people are using containers much more than they are, and knowing that we don't necessarily do a great job in supporting that. I think the real question there would be, how much access do we have to that Kubernetes that's running in whatever cloud you happen to be in, and you know, do we have ingress outgress for the CCS port to be open on it, that sort of thing. That's something to sort of consider, and I really don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but it is important. And so what I'm going to do is, can I get your could you maybe in the Q&A pod, since that's not public, Tushar, could you in the Q&A pod down below put in your email address for me, please, and I will look that up and get you back some information and data about how well it does that. So okay, so Jay says, about undos, I would love if the backup Neo file backups would have more than one backup. Basically, every change you make in the admin overwrites the back file. So if you do 2 changes in a row, the local backup is gone. That's really good feedback, Jay. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Tushar. Let me look. Perfect. Okay, I got that. I will make sure to get back to you on that, Tushar. So yeah, Jay, it's again, these are things. If you wouldn't mind, by the way, these would be great things to put into our request for new features, or you know, feature improvements in Tracker. I'm not sure if you're all aware of, you know, tracker.adobe.com. That's a place that you can, it's usually used for bugs, but we also have feature requests in there, you know, FRs. And we really do use those. So that it's not really that obvious from the interface there. And I apologize, the interface is going to be a little bit wonky, but that actually connects directly to our Jira. So when you put in a feature request into that, you're actually writing into our engineering Jira as a feature request for the next version of ColdFusion. So put it in there. Like we absolutely 100% go over that. Yeah, no, it's Jacob. It's one of the like best places to put stuff in, because being a CF admin for 13. Yeah. Yeah, put that in there, because and you know, you might think, oh, it's going to get lost or whatever, but you know what? We look at every single one. I mean, we really do. I've been working with Sharvie for the past like 2 or 3 weeks, like looking at things that are going to get into the next version of ColdFusion, which, by the way, everyone knows that ColdFusion is coming out every year now, right? Everyone knows that by now. Hopefully, we've made it loud and clear. Yeah, every year. Every single year, we'll be getting a new version of ColdFusion, new features, new fixes, new stuff. Super, super, super cool stuff. So there is a ColdFusion 2024 full stop drop mic flip table. Yes. So it's no longer going to be, you're going to be waiting 2 years to get the cool new stuff. None of that. No, we are going to be going like bang, 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 bang every year. So, well, the licensing is going to stay the same. Or, well, sorry, the licensing is going to get fixed and changed in 2024. But there will be more options, but there will also be the same licensing that we offer for like the larger people. It's still going to be there, right? But we're also going to offer other stuff, make it easier, make it more transparent, make it easier to use ColdFusion in the cloud. And we're also working with partners to make it easier for folks that don't necessarily have these giant workloads that they need ETLAs for to do things like VPS, all of those things. Carl, it was at no. Oh, and it was announced in DC, and DC East, and I've been talking about it in my talks pretty much all the time. But I mean, I might have just glossed over it here and there. But yeah, it's a real big deal. Yeah, so support is, so everything's going to kind of change to fit this Tejas. Like it's going to change to support this type of output so that it actually makes sense. And eventually there'll be things like you'll be able to just to subscribe to ColdFusion and just get the new stuff every single time, right? Like that's the far future. But yeah, we want to have options for everyone. We want everyone to be able to use ColdFusion the way they need to use it and the way they want to use it. Yeah, so compatibility, we are still focusing on backwards compatibility, Jay. Like we are not letting go of that. What this lets us do though, and this is actually kind of nice for people who upgrade stuff, each version that comes out has less code changing. That's actually a big reason why every time like a new update came out, it kind of felt like you were, throwing a bowling ball into a nursery, right? Like you never knew what was going to go down. And now it's going to be significantly smaller more often. We're going to be able to have a smaller code set that is more well tested, so there's less of a likelihood. Things like CCS are going to allow you to make a change. And eventually, by the way, this is on the docket, eventually CCS will let you update in place. So you won't have to do all the crazy, whatever stuff. You'll just be able to say, please make this 2024 instead of 23. And it'll say, okay. And it'll update it. And if everything works, great. If it doesn't, you'll just say, oh, that didn't work. Okay, please go back down to 23 and let us check what went wrong. So that is the world we want to get to. That's sort of that. We want the developer experience, but also the DevOps and the administration experience to be friendly, approachable, not scary. Because the last thing we want is, leadership to be hearing from the administrators about how much of a pain it is to deal with ColdFusion, right? Oh, don't be scared. Don't be scared. No, it's gonna be. Yes, Jay, we are putting in, oh my goodness, we are putting in some cool AI stuff. You are going to be blown away. Like, I mean, all over. We're looking into AI. I can't tell you yet because it's not finalized, but the types of cool stuff that we are looking at just runs the gamut. Everything from the developer experience to the capabilities, all of it. And we're looking at things verticals that we're not really even in these days, like data science. We're looking to make it a little bit easier to use ColdFusion with things like data science. I can't wait to show you all. This is why I'm so excited about CF Summit, because we're going to be telling you a lot about all this cool new stuff that's going to be coming out. Can CF now do direct docx to PDF? I thought it could. Yeah. I thought it could. Can it not? I thought you could import that as a file and just output it. Am I misreading that? Gobi, let me look into that. Can you please put your email into the Q&A pod at the bottom? Let me double check that, because I'm pretty sure it can, but if it can't, we could have that. Um, the docx. Okay. Actually, what's funny about that is docx should be easier because it's all XML. Um, yeah, let me note that. Let me do some testing and docx to PDF. Now, everybody's aware of the new engine for PDF that came in with 23, right? Hopefully. That engine, oh yes, that engine is the bomb.com. That thing is super powerful and awesome. So in 2023, we released we've been using this old PDF engine for a really long time for HTML to PDF. Like it's just like, it was like some kind of WebKit thing. It just didn't work very well anymore. When it came out, whenever, like 2016 or whenever we put that engine in the first time, it was great. It worked good, but things moved on. CSS moved on, right? New formats came into play. Like SVG became a thing. And so none of that stuff worked in the old PDF engine. Well, the new PDF engine, it absolutely does do all of those things. You can embed video, audio, you can use SVGs in it. It's pixel perfect, and I will buy you a drink if you prove me wrong on that, because I've tested the hell out of it. It uses like Flexbox and CSS Grid. It's rad. I mean, that is one of the like highlight features of 23. Like I know people who are moving to 23 specifically and only for that feature. Yeah, sorry, Jay, I don't mean SVG pixel perfect. I mean the actual rendering of like CSS HTML. Yeah, that wouldn't be much of a bet, right? Daniel, that's exactly right. I would have used a different word, probably a worse word than you did. But yes, it looked like before, but now it's perfect. Chef's kiss. Yeah. Yep. It's awesome. All right, so we're just 3 minutes away. Does anybody have any other questions? Sorry, I sort of like distracted and went off in sideways ways. If anybody has specific questions or wants a demo or anything like that, please let me know. Let me put, so you have my email. Is TF standard still limited to one simultaneous PDF gen? Yes, Chris, it is. That's probably never going away. That's one of the differentiating features between standard and enterprise, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm sorry. I know. It's there's a lot of talk about maybe doing some things about that, like being able to upgrade some of that stuff, but we're still trying to work our way around it. Yeah, standard. There's a lot of things that will be changing in standard for the better, hopefully, which I can't talk about right now. But it's one of those. Standard is one of those things that just doesn't get enough love, and it is the way you get into ColdFusion, right? Nobody comes into ColdFusion Enterprise, right? Nobody just drops 10 grand on a license and just says, I think I'm going to use ColdFusion. They start maybe in hosting and then they go to standard, and yeah, we need to love it more. So. Awesome. Oh, CCS replace cluster managed environment after 23. It does not replace it yet, Tejas. It does not. It is still in there. You can still use it. You don't have to set up CCS for cluster management. If cluster management is working for you today, you don't have to touch it. I would look into CCS, maybe read through the docs. There's some really good documentation on it, and see if potentially it gives you more. But if all you're doing is just kind of like controlling what's in your clusters right now, and it's doing the job, you don't need to use it. I would say it might be something to look into if you have time, though, because it is pretty neat. And if there's things missing, please tell us. We want to know. Okay. Awesome. The recording should be available in probably early next week. So, are you all familiar with the YouTube channel? So it's youtube.com/Adobe ColdFusion that is the channel on YouTube where all the videos are put. If you don't know about it, go there immediately. Tell your boss that you're taking the next 4 hours off and go watch a bunch of cool ColdFusion stuff, and you'll love it. So yeah, it's good. It's real good. There's a lot of good meaty stuff in there, by the way. Like there's some of those talks will blow your mind. There's stuff not just from me, obviously. There's a lot of community centered stuff. There's stuff from Charlie, there's stuff from like Brian Klass and Dave Ferguson, and like also even Carl is in there, I think. Carl's talk might be there. But yeah, it is rad. Hey, Hugs! I missed you, pal. All right. Well, I'm gonna turn off my